Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. My name is Davis McCallum. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the artistic director at the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. I am zooming in today from our administrative offices, which are located on the ancestral homelands of the Lenape, Munsee, and Wappinger people in what is colonially known as Phillipstown, New York, in the Hudson Valley. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you for joining us for today's Wednesday with Conversation. This is the second in a series that we're doing in the weeks and months ahead of the summer season. We kicked it off last week with a conversation with Gay Taylor Upchurch, who's directing this summer's production of Romeo and Juliet. And that conversation is now available on YouTube and on HPSF's website. And tonight we are joined by very special guest May Ann Teo, who is directing this summer's production of Where We Belong by Madeline Sayette. May Ann is in rehearsal right now in New York City for a play called 7 Minutes, which is produced by Waterwell and is being performed at Here Art Center on 6th Avenue. Her rehearsal day ends right at 5, so we're particularly fortunate that she's agreed to join us as soon as she wraps up her day of rehearsal. But while we wait for her to be here, I want to share with you just a little bit about what's coming up this summer. I think most people who are connected to HPSF to the point where you would be joining today's conversation are aware that this will be our first season in our new home, which is located at Route 9 and Snake Hill Road in Garrison, about 3 miles as the crow flies from where we've performed for the last 34 years at Boscobel. Our plan this summer, thanks to a special events permit that's been granted by the town supervisor in Phillipstown, is to put up our current tent in a location on our new campus. And the little tent icon in the slide that you can see there shows the exact location where we'll be gathering for performances this summer. It's a flat area immediately adjacent to the main building at the Garrison. And the space just to the south of there is a sloping lawn that'll be perfect for audience picnics. And there's plenty of space there for parking. And we think it's going to be a kind of a great new location, temporary for the next 2 years for our performances. The actors will be able to get dressed in an inside dressing room. That's a first ever in the history of the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. And audiences will be able to either choose to picnic or have dinner in the restaurant at the Valley. Our partners at the Garrison are looking forward to welcoming audience members before the show. Let's see. I think we have May Ann joining us right now, if I'm not mistaken. Hi.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you so much for making time. Did you really just wrap up rehearsal like a matter of seconds ago?
I did, and I am streaming in from sort of the basement of here where all of the sound equipment is. It's the only place I could be maskless with you in this moment. So it's a very, very sexy environment that I'm calling in from.
It's authentic to a working director's busy schedule. So I'm really grateful to you for making the time for this conversation, May Ann. Thank you for being here.
Of course.
May Ann knows this, but our audience on Zoom doesn't. I had the great privilege and pleasure of seeing the play 7 Minutes last night. And I was wondering if, I guess it's a bit selfish because our audience hasn't seen your play yet, and I have, but I would love to just start our conversation by talking about the current project that you're working on, and then we can get to why we're really here, which is to talk about Where We Belong. But May Ann, tell me about 7 Minutes. How are you describing it to folks who don't know the play at all?
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you showing up and being there to witness the work. 7 Minutes is a play by Stefano Massini, who wrote the Lehman trilogy, and it's the first time it's a U.S. premiere, so it's the first time the show is being performed in English. Which is really thrilling on all levels. You know, as an immigrant, I'm always thinking about things in translation and adaptation, and how we're learning from each other across the world. And it's just been a really exciting process to work with Lee Sunday Evans and Francesca Spigliari, the translator on this work. So 7 Minutes takes place in a factory in a break room where 10 women are waiting to hear from the representative who has gone in to talk to the suits. And they're the excom, they're the union, and they're waiting to hear whether or not they've been sold, whether or not their shifts are cut. They have no idea what the future holds for them at all. And so it's very tense, and it's like filled with all the stakes of like what happens if you lose your job. And when she comes back in, they immediately say, "What's happened?" And she's like, "No, we have, the factory's not closing. No, we still have our shifts. No, no one's fired. No, all of that." And they're like, "Great, great, 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 great." She goes, "There's only one condition, though. That condition is 7 minutes of our 15-minute break will be cut." And the play really starts to go in about that. It starts to really go deep into what are we willing to give up, and when, and for what. And it is this powerful play about collective action in the ways of how tough it is, of all the
Mhm,
pressures that are pushing against collective action, right? it's
mhm,
it's it's
mhm.
it's it's such a complex play because it goes so much into that, as opposed to like this is how to do it. It's like this is how tough it is to do it, and what it
Yeah.
takes to make change in this capitalist society. Like, what does it actually take to make change? And all of those questions are really rife in all of these incredible characters. So yeah, that's what we're up to.
It's such an amazing production. I mean, from the first moment when the lights come up and there are 10 women who got on the stage, you don't know how. You're just like, how thrilling is it to be in a theater and see 10 great actors, all female identifying or gender nonconforming actors on the stage at once at the very top of the show. And I guess one person joins, but until that same person leaves, there's not really an exit, right? And I thought
No.
that was so powerful. To your point, it was about people kind of hanging in there with each other to have the really challenging conversations. The listening was just amazing because one person would be talking, but you can watch 10 other great actors living through the moment of listening to what that person is saying. I can't remember the last time I saw something even remotely like it. Thrilling.
One of my favorite things that's starting to happen is that sometimes I can't tell if it's the actors responding to a moment or the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is the reason why we did it in a round was we really wanted the audience to become a part of it, that they're deeply engaged, and they also have to ask themselves what would they do in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Which is just really exciting because I'm like, wait, did who breathed, who laughed, and
Yeah.
then we're all in there together, right? It just kind of like ropes into that. It's so great when that happens.
Yes. And, I think that maybe that's a great segue into making a play under an open air tent. It's just my favorite kind of theater, the kind where the audience's presence is part of the ingredient that's being turned into a theatrical event, that we're not asked to
Mhm.
pretend that we're not there. It felt like the surround of the play last night almost kind of reminded me of that sense of communal presence that you have, say, at the Delacorte or at the Elizabethan, where everybody's all together. You know.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't be more happy to come to Hudson Valley and be under the sky and on the land. You know, like it's so powerful, especially because of what the story is about. And I'm sure people will be able to meet Maddie say it at some point. But I'm really excited about what it means for that to be on that land and to tell the story, especially at this time. So, yeah.
Well, tell us a bit about Where We Belong. How, kind of what attracted you to the piece, and how did you come to intersect with it as a director?
So I had met Maddie because she had come to give a lecture at Amherst, and I was a professor at Hampshire at some point. I remember just getting to know her as a fellow academic. And then also, we have a lot of friends in common, and we're part of the National Directors Fellowship. So we had several touch points of like, oh, hi, you're great. Oh my God, I love what you're thinking about. I never thought about that before. So all of that was sort of a little baked in for me, knowing about Maddie. And she was going to do a read at Playwrights Horizons when Larissa Fasthorse Thanksgiving play was there. And what Larissa did that was so powerful was she said, it's not just my play alone, and also my play doesn't have any Native people in it. She wanted to make sure that the theater was accountable to bring in Native artists and that their work would be highlighted along with her work, which is by her, a Native artist, but doesn't have any Native actors in it, right?
Right.
So I learned so much just by that, the way that Larissa did that, and to be included in that. Maddie was like, hey, will you come work with me for a couple hours on this? And I remember being in that space. So the first time I was on board of it, she's developed it before I came on board.
Uh-huh.
We were on the set of Thanksgiving play,
Oh, wow.
doing Where We Belong. So I'm so excited about the different places her story has been told, right? And, I'll talk about the ones that I've been involved in, but there are many more times that she's told the story or parts of the story that have so much resonance and meaning. So, first
Mm-hmm.
one that I was a part of, set of Thanksgiving play. Great.
Right. Right.
Then I think what happened next was it was invited to take part in the Origins Festival in London, which is an Indigenous artist festival from all over the world. And it was invited to have a couple of performances at Rich Mix in Bethel Green and also at Shakespeare's Globe in the Sam Wanamaker space.
Right. Which is the smaller, intimate indoor space where the audience is really present to, for example, a solo performer, as in this case, right?
And lit only by candles.
Right.
So that's actually where we began to sort of start to pull together a couple more like elements. I mean, we had some sort of a gesture of costume. Like Asa Benali, the costume designer, was actually on board at that time for consultancy. We thought about it like, this is storytelling. We know we're not going to have a set. We're not, talking about video. There's no capacity for that. And actually, it's about the story. So that's where we were at that time. And I remember how powerful that moment was in the Sam Wanamaker, particularly because that's when the people in the play were there. So her mother, her father,
Right.
the academic that gives her the tour during the British Museum, all of the people who were in the play were there in that audience. And just right across the way is, she talks about the play about Muhammad Wayonaman, or one of her ancestors whose spirit is there at Southwark Cathedral. And there's a rock that sort of is meant to sort of like hold the spirit there. So he's there. He's right there at Southwark
Not
Cathedral.
even 2 miles away on the south side of the river, right?
Yes. So while the ancestors are always there, like the marker of the ancestor is also very close, right?
Yeah.
So how wonderful to hear it in that way, and to be in that moment of, one thing I want to share is how with so much care Maddie takes storytelling and takes telling this story. So she always says something about how stories can be poison or they can be medicine. She always wants her story to be medicine. And it reminds me of something that Thich Nhat Hanh always says, like, speak so you can be heard, right? There's this thing of like, she wants to make sure of like how the Mohegan tribe is being represented, how she and her family are being represented, not much about herself, but she knows if she does something to herself, that also speaks to the fact that she is
Mm-hmm.
an ambassador for sure, and the daughter of the medicine woman.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much care in thinking about what she's saying and knowing that those people be in the room and being not only fair but just and with care.
Right.
I mean, those are my words, those are not her words. That's what I see happening. I'm really inspired by how she approaches what she says, and how everything that comes out of her mouth, she wants to be medicine.
Oh,
um
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, you take that responsibility so seriously in all of your pieces, I'm sure, but this one is not only a one-person show, which is a particular kind of collaboration with the performer, but the person who's performing is also the playwright, and additionally, the character is also the playwright, and they're telling an autobiographical story. So that's almost as much intimacy and trust as there can be, between a director and a playwright performer. How did that inform your work as a director, not just in the rehearsal room, but say, in terms of the physical production as well?
I have to admit that it was absolutely terrifying when she asked me, because she's
Mm,
also a director, and a
right,
damn
and
good
a
one.
great, yes,
A great director. So when she asked me, I was a little horrified because I was like, she's gonna know all of my tricks.
but the projects that scare you are the ones you have to say yes to. So I'm glad you did. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. I mean, I just thought, oh my God, she's gonna read through me or something. She's gonna think I'm terrible. She's gonna know that, like, like, I'm like, the best person would be, honestly, to direct this is like Maddie cloned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like clone Maddie. Maddie directs it. So it was terrifying. It was really terrifying. And I love how um Maddie really is able to, like, let someone do their job.
Right.
It was extremely generous how she was in the process of letting me do my job when she also is a director. She knows the stories. She knows all those layers. She knows the symbols. She knows. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very different not to be Mohegan. And I can tell you, like, she did not feel that there was another Mohegan director who could take it forward. So, I'm very grateful that I was trusted enough to be allowed to learn and be
Mm-hmm.
allowed to listen and be allowed to respond, to make sure that we weren't, doing any of the bullshit like objectification and fetishization and any of that. Um,
Right.
but that's always at risk because I'm not of the culture. So I will say that, like, I terrifying and invigorating, and put me in a place where I could learn so much, which is where I like
Mm-hmm.
to be quite honest. Um, yeah, that's how it was.
Now, the version of it that you did during the pandemic, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was scheduled to be an in-person performance at Woolly Mammoth, and then of course the pandemic came and everyone had to pivot, as the phrase goes, and you ended up making a movie of it. So that's like a whole, having gone down the road of what it's going to feel like as a piece of in-person three-dimensional theater, then you had a whole nother layer of work to create this film. I mean, a beautiful, beautiful film of the performance. Um, I know you also have a background in film, but what was that moment like where you thought, okay, so now we're making a movie of what would have been the play, but we still want it to feel like a play? How did you find that kind of that center ground?
And I just want to, like, shout out Wooly for being so flexible and adapting. Like, Maria really adapted with us and how comfortable it was. Let's remember that at that moment, we didn't have a vaccine. Like, we did not
Right.
have the vaccine that moment. And Maddie said something about how, like, I I want to, I want Native people to feel comfortable to come. But at that point in time, the rates of Native folks getting COVID and dying were very high. And
Right.
so, for her, she was like, why are we doing this thing when and people I want to be there should not be there. And like it feels like anyone who comes into the theater to watch a show is a sociopath because they're not like, this is not what we should be doing in this moment. It's gathering at that particular moment. Now it's
Yes.
different. Now we have a lot of like vaccines and boosters. It's just a different time. So I just want to name that was a lot of discussion and thinking about what do we do? What do we do in this moment to actually take care? Because that's one of the things of the play. How do we care for each other? How can we be aware of each other? And if we're
Mm-hmm.
theater makers without that care of the people who are coming through and our own safety, what are we actually doing? So I think that was such a massive pivot to have. And I think I just like am so grateful to the opportunity to make that into film because even though it was really challenging, because we were not only just making into a film, we also were making the production with scenic elements and all of that for the first time.
Right.
So we had never had a set. We had never had like, you know what I mean? What I would call like costume with like designers. So that was the first time we had that opportunity. And then we were just going to make it into a film. So there are a lot of things that
Mm.
were like, how are we going to do this? Also, Maddie was like, I am not a film actor. Like there were a lot of things. And one thing that really was powerful was the knowledge that the people she wanted to tell the story for, most of all, the 16-year-old Mohegan youth, would
Mm-hmm.
now have access to it,
Right.
and that would actually reach them. It would just take a little longer after like an editing process and a shoot to be able to get to them,
Yeah.
right?
That was the thing that was pulling you guys through the process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's what I kept saying, and that's what she kept knowing that this is why we're doing it, because it will have more distribution to more people in that way. And I will say that I really wanted to make sure it didn't feel like archival. I wanted to make it a filmic experience of a theater production. Like we knew
Mm-hmm.
we couldn't rip it up and just make it a film and like shoot it on your land or shoot it, and like we knew that wasn't actually the deal. We knew that it is supposed to have a production that would hopefully tour like we're doing now afterwards.
Yes.
So, we really thought about breath. How do we get the audience to breathe with her? How
Mm-hmm.
how do we get the feel of how an audience perceives? How do we get the idea of a blink? Like what does it mean to watch a film versus watch the theater? And how do we make sure that
Mm-hmm.
the experience is a bit of a both and where it intersects and where it's separate?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we should shout out Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in DC for producing the world premiere in partnership with the Folger Shakespeare Library. And I think it was shot on the stage at Baltimore Center Stage. Am I right about
No,
that?
it was shot at Woolly.
At Woolly. Okay. Well, so now you're about to embark on a tour, and the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival is producing the play with Woolly Mammoth Theater Company in association with the Folger, and we're a part of, I think, 4 or 5 different stops around the country, and information for that about those will be forthcoming. But I wanted to just ask you about what that means. I know in particular that Maddie's writing an opening section to the play that's specific to each place where you'll be performing about that. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what the impulse is there and how that's being crafted for each kind of stop on the tour.
Yeah, I think what's very important is when we think about land, like why do we do land acknowledgments at all? And something that she says that I find so powerful is she's like, I don't want to do it like white theaters do it as like it's not um the way in which it's embraced is not about requirement, but a true honoring
Mm-hmm.
of the people who have been the caretakers of the land. And so place is so important in the work, and to Maddie, right? Where we belong. It's like in the title. Where is in the title? It's just like, boom. Here
Yeah.
we are together in this moment. So where are we? So where are we now? Where are we? And I think that where in the prologue and the epilogue, which are continually shifting, is not only the physical where, but the spiritual where. And land acknowledgements are not just about physical where, they're about the spiritual where, locating us and what
Mhm.
has been and gathering us together to be here together in this moment. So, yes, every place absolutely calls in in a different way, and arrives. She brings us together in a different way and arrives. And I have to say, the epilogue also is probably going to shift because, what is this world now? What are borders right now, given the war that's happening? all,
Yeah.
all of these things that are coming up, it's a living and breathing um, performance because she is living and breathing and becoming even as we sit here right now. So how alive that is it's so beautiful that that's so alive, that consciousness is constantly at play, even as she's talking about ancestors from centuries ago and their journeys. And even as she's talking about Shakespeare, and even as she's talking about things that happened when she was 9, there still is
Mm.
that I am here in this moment with you, and we're going to go through this together every single time. There's, you asked about this whole thing about the filming. That was one thing that was actually very challenging because she was like, I don't know how to tell the story in a way that's actually alive, because the story only matters if someone who hasn't heard it is listening. So we were actually
Mhm.
trying to find, like, do we actually bring in people each time we do a run to sit in the back masked and receive the story? Like, what do we do to make sure that's true?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I love that it's not even dedication, it's that paradigm, that understanding that is beyond performance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
ritual. It's alive. It's an actual ritual that has to happen that way. I can tell you, we also don't want a bunch of people because when you're filming, you need to have clear sound. So we don't want people to be laughing. We don't want people to like have that reaction that she needs. So there was a moment, Davis, where she said, "Look, I know why we don't have a lot of people there, but I feel like I'm going crazy here by myself.
Yeah.
Maybe interpretive dance." And then we laughed and she said, "I'm actually not joking. If I can feel some sort of response in the audience, I won't
Mhm.
feel alone." And
Mhm.
so I can tell you, during part of that filming, myself, Maria, Sonia were in the audience. And Davis, there's something really powerful about that. Like, I was here and I was like, okay, well, what is an appropriate like gesture, right? Like, she's talking about genocide. Like, I don't want to be doing things that are inappropriate.
Yeah.
But there's a way that I started to like breathe with her, to like laugh with her,
Mhm.
to be able to hold what she's saying, just hold with her, just by my hands, just like receiving it here, to like let it receive. And I understood the play completely differently when I was actively embodied listening.
The physical. Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited to have this piece as part of HBSF's first season in our new home for all the reasons that you've been saying, man. It's a perfect way for us to start a conversation about place, about land, about stewardship, about responsibility, about gratitude, and open up those conversations in a very site specific way in the heart of Lenapehoking. And
Mm.
then also just to do this play outside. um, I think I have a personal opinion that doing plays outside kind of awakens our sensitivity to the exact moment, because every temperature is changing or the light is changing or there's ambient noise or a breeze blows through, it just kind of awakens the human spirit to the current moment. And I just feel that will be very consonant with the kind of theater that you and Maddie and your team are making or engaged in making with this piece.
I love how you just said that, and I 1,000% agree. Like I think that where her feet landing, we have to create so much of the organic on our set. We have to create the dirt. We have to create the sense of water. We have to create the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And how beautiful it is that at, Hudson Valley Shakespeare, we get to be in it. And what will that happen to the story and people who hear it? I think it's going to be extraordinarily special because I don't think we've ever done that. So this is the first time we're taking it outside. First time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our next chapter of our conversation, maybe we could just back out a little bit and talk about you and your artistry overall. Our staff has a biweekly anti-racism meeting, and recently we've been reviewing the Emerging from the Cave series that Jesse Alec and TCG have put out. And we watched a video of you presenting about holistic artist support, which we were all just kind of thrilled to get to hear your voice and hear you tell part of your own story. I wonder whether you could just share a little bit about, kind of your either how you gravitated to being a director or how you chose directing as a passion and as a vocation.
Thank you. I didn't choose this. It was a calling. And I think that everything in my life as a Singaporean immigrant, grew up Seventh-day Adventist in very oppressive ideologies and very like particular ideas of what it means to be a good child, to be a good person. It certainly wasn't like a theater director in New York. That wasn't even like a concept in growing up in my religion and my culture. I don't come from a family of artists. I don't. I come from teachers and social workers, and I come from people who are deeply engaged in communities and those around them, and learning and care, but not through art.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I feel like the art form called me because it's so total. It's like the total thing to have connection of intimacy and honesty. It's like I don't know where else what other art form has that immediacy like theater does. I love film,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something about breathing the same air
Mm-hmm.
right there and the vibrations of the sound from my voice hitting your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so beautiful. Um, and so I feel like I was called. I feel like it was not something that I had a choice in, but that my soul aligned to it. And it's like pretty much all I can do to not give up because and I feel very grateful that I am like making a living as a director and in the theater. It's still shocking to me. Like I'm kind of like you know, um, it was not expected.
Yeah.
It was not. It's not something that I expected or was entitled to,
Mm-hmm.
despite it being a calling.
Yeah.
I still don't feel like I have the entitlement to it. I feel very, very grateful. Um, and I can tell you that, like, all right, let me get to a better story. It's funnier. Okay, so let me tell you the moment where I was like, okay, here I am a director. I
Okay.
was in college and we were doing the Christmas Carol, and I was one of the small little roles, whatever, like that. And I was waiting for my thing backstage, and I was also really pissed off because the director was an idiot. Didn't know how to structure time. I was like waiting around for like few stupid lines, and I was like constantly going, "No, that's not the way to go about that beat," and whatever, like that. I was like, "Man, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do it so much better." Well,
Mm-hmm.
the real thing was, is I'm backstage and I'm busy directing everyone on stage, and then everything goes silent. And I was like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And then I realized that I missed my cue to get on stage.
Wow.
So I get on
Like,
there
someone's
and
not on. Wait, it's me. I'm not on. Yeah.
I realized that like I should be a director because I'm not an actor. Like, I really I'm like, oh, I'm so busy directing that I missed
Yeah.
my cue. And that was something that I think was like a little point of thing of like, if I'm so busy doing this action, why don't I just do that action? It's so
Mhm.
delicious. And one of the actors I worked with, I was like, they were like, oh, Mayanne, you should act. I was like, no, I don't do that. They're like, well, I guess it's not, it's fine because you're like acting all of us. Like you have a sense of all of each
Mhm.
person and being inside each
Mhm.
person. And I think that's true. I think I get to actually do that in a way where I don't have to memorize lines. It's great.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Okay, so pre-production and design, rehearsal, previews where you are right now on 6th Avenue in the basement of Hero Art Center, and performance. Which of those phases of the work is the one that kind of calls to you the most, that feeds your soul artistically the most?
Ooh, ooh. NJ, the associate director, she brought up something that Anne Bogart, who taught both of us at Columbia, said. She says something like, sometimes Anne will be like, "Are you a beginner, a middle, or an ender?"
I
And you went
remember
there
that from her
too,
book.
right, Davis?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that's something I struggle with because I want to be good at everything.
Hmm.
I I love the beginning. I love it. I'm also a dramaturg, so I like being on. So like with Maddie, I actually have been doing a lot of development with her throughout,
Right.
since I started working on it. So I don't just come in and direct. Like I'm deeply interested in structure, and I'm deeply interested in like what is this at all? I love that. I love the granular and the birth from the beginning.
Hmm.
So I think today I'm going to say that I love the beginning most because that is where all possibility is still alive. That
Yeah.
you haven't cut off all of those decisions to choose what seems like the right one. Um, yeah, I'm going to say the place of all possibility, the beginning.
That's beautiful. Well, so in addition to being a director, now you're, well, now you're an institutional leader. You've already been a thought leader for quite some time, but you've recently joined the team at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland as the associate artistic director. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about what that next chapter of your journey is like, and how that's changing or growing or evolving the ways in which you're thinking about what the future of our field can and should look like.
Yeah. So I became the artistic director of Musical Theater Factory for about 3 years, and I had a great time doing it. And when Nataki Garrett got the job at OSF, I thought, oh wow, this is a major shift. My God. I mean, look at that. You're looking at the Elizabethan right there. It's a 1200 seat
Mm-hmm.
Elizabethan. It's one of three theaters. And just to know that this brilliant, visionary Black woman was at the helm of that, I was like, amazing, awesome. And Evan
Mm-hmm.
Ochkin is a friend of mine from way back in San Francisco. So I was like, yes, go team, amazing, rooting for you. Not going to be easy, rooting for you. I was like, she has the hardest job in American theater, rooting
Mm-hmm.
for you. And so I was like, great, 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 great. And I was like, on with my life, continuing on. And then she put out the call for director of innovation strategy. I was like, interesting. Huh. Interesting. And then the job, I'm the director of new work. So an associate artistic director and director of new work. And I thought to myself, um, this piece of paper is calling my soul. I showed it to my
Mm-hmm.
dad. My dad was like, "Do they know you? Are they writing it like because that's you?"
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "No, they don't know me, but I feel the same." And I remember that moment being like, Oh, that's a call. That's a
Mhm.
call. And you know, I really loved being at MTF, and they have an incredible new Brisa Muniz is the new artistic director. She's doing fantastic already. And I knew that it's a smaller development organization. And the
Mhm.
thing that I knew was I I felt like I needed more connection to the pipeline. And I think that's where the change needs to happen, is in the pipeline. And all the small organizations, the big organizations, everyone's necessary to make change within where they are to change the pipeline.
Mhm.
And I just thought, like, to be able to work for and have mentorship under Nataki, to be able to have a crew with like Evan Ochkin and Scarlett Kim, to like join a crew, to like be able to have, I mean, triple, quadruple the budget, to be
Mhm.
able to do that at this moment in my life, it was basically like everything came together, and I'm so grateful that they took me. You know, I'm just so
Yeah.
grateful that they were like, "Great, you out of all of these applicants, we'll have you." um, so I look forward to really in within that visionary team being able to continue the development work that I've been doing, because I love that, and being
Mhm.
able to change the pipeline for artists to be able to do the extraordinary things that they're doing and be able to care for it all the way to production.
Well, it sounds brilliant, and a perfect job for you. You know, the infinite possibilities of the beginning is a person who lives in that space, and that impulse feeds their soul. Seems like the ideal person for a director of new work, kind of like instigating and cultivating, and you know, kind of bringing new pieces into the world and sharing them, not just with OSF, but the rest of the field. Well, we have maybe 5 or 10 minutes left, and I'm aware that you have a curtain at 6:30, right? Is it 6:30 tonight?
It is.
Oh my God. So I just wanted to say, Emily, who's been monitoring the chat, I wanted to throw it open to anybody who's watching the StreamYard who may want to have a particular question for Mayanne. And it's always a moment when people are typing in a question, and I just want to leave a little space here in case anybody has a burning question. Um, Okay, here's one. Can you see that on your screen,
I
man?
can.
We
Yeah.
spoke about this a bit before, but I'll read it out for folks. It's a question that says, Man's worked in both film and theater. How does your approach change in both of those mediums, or in either?
I love that question. I would say that they feed each other in both of the mediums, right? So, for example, today I gave a note. I said, okay, we're doing it in the round. I said, when you go to that corner of the kitchen, it's like a close up.
Yeah, I was
So
sitting right there last night, man.
you were saying there, yeah.
Right
It's
next to the teapot,
didn't it
the
feel like
tea
a
kettle.
close up? Like they would come
Yeah,
to a close
amazing.
up. And they're
Yeah,
like, you know, it's a space. So like all those people are far away from you. So you better make that close up worth it, because we're cutting to you. Like that's what it is for that 20-person bank right there, right? So I think that both have helped me. Like when I think about shot structure, it really helps me to think about staging. And I think that
yeah.
there's a lot of things that go back and forth in terms of composition, in terms of rhythm, in terms of cuts and edits, in terms of build,
My God,
that
man,
really
yeah.
help. Like both of those things really approach or back and forth. One thing I find extremely helpful is that in theater, and I read this in a book, and I can't tell you who the book was about, but it was a film book, that really has helped me in going back and forth between mediums. The camera in film is the eye of focus. The camera focuses what you look at. So wherever that camera is, that is what will be seen. And the actor actually doesn't have a choice in that, where the camera is seen. So the actor can be doing like wild and out, doing whatever they want to do. But if they're not on camera, it will never be seen, right? So the camera is of utmost importance of what's caught. And how the actor is with that camera is all, right? In theater, the actor controls all the focus. The actor will like say a line, throw it to the other person, your eyes follow them, or you're watching the other person. There's so much more powerful agency that the actor has in theater, which is why all these actors who are like making a lot more money in TV film will still come back
Yeah.
and do theater, because it's such a thrilling thing to be able to control the focus. And so as
Yeah.
a director in theater, I am supporting the actor make choices about focus. In film, I'm supporting the actor as well, but the camera to make choices for focus.
Mm. Well, that was so beautifully orchestrated, particularly in the first 10 minutes of the play last night. We got 10 actors on stage, and that dialogue is like one line, one line, one line, one line, but you always knew who was speaking because the other 9 people were collaborating to throw the focus around the space in such an athletic way, really more like a balletic way. It was just incredible. Just so totally incredible. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to pitch the play again. 7 minutes. Waterwell.org is the place where you can get tickets. And when does it open? It must be like, in the next couple days.
Yeah, I mean, we officially, today's my last day, so we'll freeze today. And so we've got performances right now going on, like tonight, the next few nights. The company opening is on Sunday, the 27th. Reviews will be out after that. And then we're going all the way till April 10th, and unless there's an extension. But please come see us before April 10th.
Yeah, and get your tickets before the review comes out because you won't be able to get them after. Now, I've got 2 other little things to mention before we wrap up. The Shakespeare Festival is hosting workshops together with our partners, the Hudson Highlands Land Trust, the Garrison Art Center, the Garrison, at least 4 or 5 other partners that are going to be at the Garrison this Saturday and Sunday, and then the next 2 weekends. And these are workshops hosted and run by Processional Arts Workshops. They're free art making workshops where community members can come and make these illuminated lanterns inspired by the flora and fauna of the Hudson Highlands. And then on Sunday, April 17th, there'll be a procession, and community members will be able to walk these gorgeous illuminated lanterns around the landscape to inaugurate the post-golf life of the site, and celebrate the return of spring and the ecological restoration of this land. So more information available at highlandlights.org. And then tonight's conversation is part of a series called Wednesday With, and next Wednesday we'll be in conversation with Anne Washburn, the playwright of Mr. Burns, and one of contemporary American theater's kind of just great literary minds. I feel really fortunate to get to direct Mr. Burns this summer, and I can't wait to have a conversation with Anne next week. Tonight, I want to say a special thank you to Mayanne Teo for giving us your time in the midst of everything else that you have going on this week. It really means a lot to me. I'm deeply grateful to you, and thank you for the inspiring conversation about where we belong. We'll have another one with Madeline Sayette soon. Mayanne, I want to say have a great preview. I guess almost final preview if today was your last rehearsal. Huge congratulations on the accomplishment of the play, and I cannot wait to welcome you to the Hudson Valley in a few short months.
Thank you so much, David. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
My great pleasure. Have a good evening, and thank you everybody for being a part of Wednesdays With. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.